From technology to fashion to e-commerce, our guest today has led from the front in a myriad of sectors. And today, Gunjan Soni is the new managing director of YouTube India. Now, according to industry experts, India is the fastest growing market for YouTube, and YouTube is the biggest platform for creators, influencers, and creators turning into millionaire entrepreneurs. In this discussion, Gunjan talks to us about her journey, about the biggest success stories in the creator economy and the pitfalls therein. She also talks to us about the biggest trends in the content space and where she sees YouTube India in 5 years from now. Gunjan, very warm welcome to this latest episode of Corner Office Conversation.
Thank you, Anirban. It's really a pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. The pleasure is ours, Gunjan. So, you've had such a diverse career. Take me through that, and finally, what were the decisions that finally brought you to YouTube?
Yeah. So, I actually started my career, not many people know, with coding. Way back in Infosys, I'm a computer science engineer. Moved on post my MBA to join McKinsey. And it was, I think, such a wonderful place for someone like me who has, often been described as someone having insatiable curiosity. So I had a wonderful time really working across multiple industries, multiple cultures globally, and learned a lot. I think that led me to then think more deeply about, the intersection of consumer and technology, which was my platform to becoming a partner in McKinsey. Led me to media, e-commerce, and I can't think of a better place where these three things combine: India, technology, consumer, disruption. So I think that pretty much gives you the answer of why I am here at YouTube now.
Absolutely. And there are so many lessons that you must have learned in your journey that you can use in YouTube, and we'll come to that in your subsequent answers. But stepping in this leadership role at a time when, according to industry experts, India is the fastest growing market for YouTube. How do you really see this? And, what are some of the opportunities and what are some of the challenges you see? First of all, why don't you confirm whether India is indeed the fastest growing market for YouTube?
Well, I will neither confirm nor deny this. We don't typically report our numbers at this level.
Right.
But coming to the heart of your question, if you just look around in India today, I think there is such a strong scale which has become possible, largely because of more affordable access on one end. And then you have this really young demographic, again at scale in India, who's very ambitious and very entrepreneurial. Yep. And ready to do this not just on the local but on the global stage. I think you combine all this and you really see how a platform like YouTube can help fuel the ambitions as well as careers for these future entrepreneurs. I'll add to it by just sharing something very interesting, because I think the time has come where the boundaries between users and creators is blurring really fast.
Absolutely.
And, just last year, nearly 100 million channels uploaded content on YouTube, right? So that's a strong example
that's
of
across
how
the world.
That's just in India alone,
okay. Wow.
Right? And that's the power of what I'm talking about, this convergence. And about 15,000 of them already have more than 1 million subscribers. And this is again all India, right? I mean, just to put it in perspective, that's like they're sitting here in Mumbai right now, right? So that's like filling Wankhede Stadium 30 times over for each of these creators' channels.
Yeah.
I think that's the speed and the scale at which these creators are finding their voice and creating their careers on YouTube is just incredible.
Gunjan, double-clicking on this whole phenomenon of creators becoming entrepreneurs. We've seen it globally for a few years. We have the example of Marc Rober, for instance, who was one of our guests in a very recent episode. Now, in the last 1 year, that trend has come to India, right? These creators are becoming sort of the founders of their, mini business empires, so to speak. How does YouTube facilitate that? Um, and if you could tell me your favorite story out of these, as part of this phenomenon.
Yeah, yeah. No, absolutely. And I think, it's so heartwarming that you asked this question because it is the time for Indian, creators. I genuinely feel for being successful on a global stage. If you talk about going on the global stage in particular, think of Viju. He was a bus driver and a carpenter. He changed his family's fortunes, by coming on YouTube and becoming successful. He was the first creator in Asia to touch 50 million subscribers. The other contrasting one to take is when we are seeing these creators collaborate with international creators.
Yeah.
There's another creator, Mayo Japan, who's been collaborating with a lot of
She was
Indian
part of that episode as well.
creators.
Yeah.
And, her story is also fascinating because she actually studied Hindi.
Yeah.
And is therefore able to, relate. And she tells, stories about India
Right.
in Japan. And I think just imagine the power of when you bring these really wonderful creators from across geographies. And the world is more global than ever.
Yeah.
So I think these are the two areas where we're seeing a lot of entrepreneurship come in. But I think there's a third area which is emerging strongly now, where we're seeing a new generation of creators start their own brands or actually support fashion, beauty, and many other categories in them being able to earn affiliate income on the back of it as well, right? So these creators are absolutely entrepreneurs in their own right, and they're leveraging different content forms. And again, I'm very proud to say that as YouTube, they probably, perhaps provide the widest range of content formats possible for these, creators to really paint their own canvas from. You have on one end short form, on the other hand, you have CTV, which is the large screen on which you can build your IPs. You take it to podcasts as a medium that we are using right now, or live consumption. So it's just, the variety and the creators who are leveraging it all are the ones who we are seeing be even more successful in these entrepreneurial journeys.
Right. There's a lot to unpack in that answer, but I'll just start with, a lot of creators will be watching this episode and want to know what they can do to traverse that path that, say, a Kusha Kapila has, traversed successfully, or a Biju, like I mentioned. First of all, what are Indian creators doing differently than, say, the ones globally to become success stories? And if you had, I know there is no one rule book, etc., but if you had to say like if you had to point out a list of like 2 or 3 things that click always, one of them is of course relatability.
Correct.
Yeah. But what are the other things that they should really think of when they're creating content to beat algorithms and become that,
I wish there was a secret formula, but I think you alluded to what is perhaps the most important thing, which is really building a trusted community over a period of time. So the common thread between all these various stories that we discuss is that there is a currency of fandom, which has been built by deep investment by these creators in having a consistent voice over a long period of time. So, this is not a 1 week, or a 1 month game that they play. And they invest the time. You talk to these creators, the more successful they are, the more they invest the time is still directly reading the comments of their community, making sure that they actually still have not lost touch, even though the community size may be touching multi-millions. And then, harnessing that trust to be able to sometimes voice opinions and deliver a message, sometimes creating IPs, especially in long form. We are seeing a lot of creators, both in the cooking and, the masterclass space, be able to create IPs, or, stand-up comedians creating, long form IPs, which are very successful. So that's clearly the path that we see them take on. And then there is, I think short form is a very easy entry point for a new generation of creators. So I think that would be the other thing I would add, that, experiment with formats. Perhaps you can use short form as an entry point. then get on to build your IPs, experiment with multi-formats. I think these are probably some of the lessons that we hear often from creators. We also create, and bring creators together in a format called collectives.
Yeah.
And I think that's a great way for both upcoming creators and, long-standing creators. They're continuously learning and we are continuously learning, but there is no one single formula.
Yeah. And I think what stands out in all this is that when you talk about investment, it's not fancy production. You can just have a phone with a camera and create great content that will make
Absolutely.
you really, really popular. And we've seen so many examples of that. How Bhuvan Bam started, for instance, and where he is now, etc. We spoke about, my question was about, beating algorithms, etc. And a lot of creators complain that there is just no understanding how algorithms work, what will become popular. Is there a way to understand this, or is it just, is it something that even people like you who are leading the platform in India can't figure out?
So I think, really, in many ways, we are talking about harnessing the creativity and being able to then translate it into the currency of fandom, right? The routes can be many to do that. And I think you alluded to a couple of them. But I think the other great one in India in particular is the linguistic diversity.
Right.
We are seeing creators being able to use now audio dubbing. And that is allowing them to, on a single channel, be able to have multiple audio feeds, enlarging their reach. Equally, we are seeing, good creators leverage and swear by the analytics that they receive. So I think, again, I'll go back to saying, using these tools at their disposal, analytics provides you deep insights, both on your community, your viewership, the kind of content that's resonating, being able to use that. And now you have, Gen AI that's also helping creators better leverage their time in a more productive avenues and ways. So when you combine all of this, I think it's really about knowing the audience that you want to resonate with, experimenting with content, formats, staying true and authentic, and going back and leveraging the analytics and the help and support of other creators, and going down on that journey and path.
Right. Let's come to formats. You spoke about shorts, and we all know that this has completely revolutionized the way content is made and consumed. It's made it more efficient and more inclusive. 30 seconds, a 30-second video is much easier to make, obviously, than a 5-minute video. But it's reached sort of a maturity stage. It's there now. If you were to talk about other exciting formats or the next vista, and I don't mean podcast because that's my next question, what would you point out?
Yeah. So I think first, I would say that shorts is still something that is really firing and is continuing to see tremendous growth. In fact, June this year, we looked at some of the statistics and we see that monthly logged in viewers on shorts is 650 million in India.
Okay.
Now, that's a really whoppingly large number. And that means that, from a standpoint also of advertisers and brands, the avenue to reach out to completely new consumer sets lies in that format. And I think that's a very powerful format for both creators and the industry at large.
Why do you say new consumer sets?
Because the reach is becoming 650 million, right? So for consumers who have been already consuming long form are there. But consumers who are, perhaps tilting more towards short form, that becomes the new format to leverage.
The incrementality is much more dynamic in this
I would think so, because, it's a format, like you said, which has the 30-second version of it. So definitely it resonates with somewhat different audiences as well. But coming back to then your, key question on, what beyond this, and I think the other kind of twin engine of growth, I would say we are seeing is in the connected TV as a format. In fact, it's been our fastest growing format now in India for the last 5 years. We have touched now 75 million users on connected TV
Right.
above the age of 18. And that is a format that actually lends itself to very different type of storytelling, very in tune, one would think, with long format. But again, we are seeing both long format and short format sign. And in fact, I would go to the extent of saying we are perhaps the only platform that's cracked the code on getting short form to work on the large screen.
Right.
So I think these two are perhaps the most exciting, and I will not touch podcasts since you said that's going to be your next question.
Yeah, but then I have to slip in something
Yes,
else
of course.
because you spoke about connected TV. And one fascinating trend that has just started, I don't know how it will mature. So we had Amir Khan, who recently decided to release Sitare Zameen Par on YouTube. And that sort of relates to connected TV because then, I mean, where else will people watch that film? But in that way, you're actually coming into a space which is now sort of dominated by the likes of Netflix, Disney, etc. Maybe not intentionally. And YouTube has been a disruptor in many other spaces. Do you see YouTube being a disruptor in this space as well? And I mean the streaming, the OTT streaming space, etc.
First of all, I would like to say that, for a very long time, we've played a big role in the media industry. I think whether it's been the breaking of new movie or music videos, right from trailers, behind the scenes. So, in fact, the movie pundits often have their own version of algorithms to predict if the YouTube first week performance is like this is how the movie will do in the box office. So that's been going on for a while. So I don't think that's new. What is really new and what's grabbing attention with the Amar story, and obviously very excited to partner with him on it, is really the fact that it's a different pathway of monetization for the industry. Because they're thinking about the windowing strategy more differently, and it's coming right after theater.
Yeah.
In a pay-per-view format.
Yeah.
So I think that is where this one gets more exciting and more innovative. So definitely, from a media industry standpoint, we see both a lot of interest and we see a lot of exciting opportunities. So these are going to be, seamless interfaces that continue to get enabled, but very, very exciting possibilities and road ahead.
When you say exciting possibilities, do we see more releases, film releases happening on YouTube?
I would not say more, but the future is
space.
Yes, absolutely. Watch the space. There's going to be a lot of excitement.
Right. Podcasts. YouTube has quietly, I think, become the biggest platform. And one really interesting thing in India is that the consumption pattern is so visual, right? They even watch their songs instead of listening to them, which is why podcasts have, we face this problem a lot. We started out and still are at the core an audio podcast, but we've realized that there is no way to break into that large listenership or viewership space unless you pivot to videos. And one platform which is hugely responsible for us making that pivot is YouTube. How do you see this growing? And, what are the trends that really excite you in this space now?
I think you said it already in your question. In many ways, the Indian consumption habit is still disproportionately wired towards video. And we hope and expect that this trend will only continue to get strengthened. And I think it has roots again back to people's ability to attempt to relate with the people that they're listening to. And I think those visual cues, do play a role in their ability to appreciate, the conversation that's going on. And therefore, even in a format like podcast, us having this dialogue and how we interact with each other helps people consume it in a more engaging and more exciting way. And that is what the research is largely telling us is at the heart of the video consumption. We've seen this in music as well. Yeah. So, it's not just the podcast. Music is another very audio heavy industry. and yet you see, the video consumption
Very true.
of music is super strong.
Very true.
So I think genre after genre, this is clearly what the consumers are telling us.
Tell me, I don't know if YouTube has ever sort of shared its financial performance in India or the kind of investments that it plans. Would you tell our viewers a little bit about whether you're profitable in India and investment plans? Where do you, even if you don't give me numbers, where is the largest chunk of your investment going? How are you expanding in India, etc.?
Only for you. Well, we don't talk about our profit numbers, but what we take real pride in, like I said, going back to our mission, is how are we contributing to the ecosystem. So I'm definitely happy to share with you that in the last 3 years, YouTube has paid 21,000 crore to creators, artists, and media companies in India. And that is just the way in which we see this, like I said, the creator nation and economy growing.
Sorry, rookie question. What are the payments for? I mean, is this just revenue?
So, we are a revenue share model.
Right.
So the payments are basically, the more successful the creators are, the more successful we are, and vice versa.
Sure.
It's a positive flywheel between the two. And then talking about future investments, definitely, technology is where the heart of our investment and support and the tooling for enabling the ecosystem goes in. Over the next 2 years, we see ourselves in India investing nearly 850 crore across the various topics that we would be working and supporting the Indian creator economy towards.
Right, wonderful. Okay, Gen AI, huge, right? We all know the advantages and the potential it has to just overhaul everything. Huge disruptor. We've seen AI being put to the best and the worst uses on platforms like YouTube and Instagram, which is why you recently upgraded your, partnership rules to filter repetitive content, etc., which is clearly a way of filtering out AI generated content, which does not probably suit your standards. My question is, how would you really gauge as, AI is becoming really, really accurate, in generating images that look real but may not be, etc. So what are those, if you can point me towards a little, as in explain the guardrails a little better for our viewers as to how you filter out unwanted content that are AI generated?
Well, you've really done your homework well on our policies. And, to share a little bit more about it, what that upgrade really focuses on is it improves our ability to detect mass-produced or repetitive content, which in, layperson's terms, we would often refer to as spammy content, coming our way, and filters it out. And so this supports our pre-existing policies of, not monetizing content like this. But just as, we are leveraging our prowess also to upgrade our tooling to do this. I think in addition, always education plays a big role.
Yeah.
And therefore, a lot of focus and effort is going in not just putting up the policies for easy consumption, but also in really talking to our, our key stakeholders in the ecosystem, which is really the creators, and, enabling them with the positive use cases of Gen AI, because Gen AI, like you also alluded to, can really help remove, more less productive tasks. They can help creators, brainstorm better. And then, borrowing from the world of Google, we now have VO3, which also, helps
Absolutely.
creators be able to generate, fully fledged videos. So I think it's really harnessing the capabilities of Gen AI in the right way, which is what our focus is. And equally being very, very clear on avoiding and working towards that sustainable and safe, trusted environment by continuously innovating and improving on our own tooling.
But are creators convinced? Because this is such an easy way to create content that will grab eyeballs, but may not suit the ethics of what YouTube should stand for, when you make them more aware of the pitfalls, what kind of reactions do you get from them?
Yeah. Most creators actually understand that it goes back to knowing what will resonate with your audience, right? So not all content is anyway monetizable on YouTube. Hasn't been the case even in the past. In fact, we have for creators to start monetizing, they have to become part of the YouTube Partner Program.
Right.
And the YouTube Partner Program already has a higher standard on the quality of content you need to produce. So I think creators who are very serious about monetization are actually eager to understand what's the right use cases and what to avoid in terms of pitfalls. And we think that, the industry will get shaped hopefully in the right direction. And we need to continue to invest in that, both ourselves, but also equally, the industry participants.
Right, right. Okay, talk about some other pitfalls. We hear about burnout quite a lot, both on the part of creators as well as viewers. We hear about misinformation, which may or may not be AI generated. The fake narrative building, etc. Authenticity concerns. Then, of course, there is this whole thing about depending on one platform, which is sort of the issue with so many aggregators. Even if I talk about Zomato and the dynamic it has with restaurants, or and YouTube, the dynamic it has with creators. Do these issues appeal to you as challenges? Do they disturb you? And how do you think about that?
See, I think most creators come to platforms like ours to either for self-expression or to bring, long-standing careers which are sustainable for themselves, right? We started this conversation by talking about that, these creators are becoming the content entrepreneurs.
Sure.
I think, therefore, success for them and the work that we are very focused on lies in a large part on, having a long-term sustainable story for both growth and earnings from their perspective. And I think we are also offering perhaps the widest spectrum of monetization options. Some of them have been very well understood, some of them are relatively new. Obviously the most common model that people are aware of is the ad-based monetization. But again, I'm very happy to share that, we also have fan funding and, subscription as another option. And we are seeing some very successful use cases on that. And
What is fan funding, sorry?
so fan funding is when, your own subscriber base can actually fund, or it can also manifest itself in memberships.
Yeah.
So we are seeing these newer avenues where it's not the advertiser, but the user in some ways, contributing towards the content production and consumption, also starting to thrive. So in fact, again, taking some numbers, nearly 43,000 creators earned by the way of fan funding by end of last year, right? So that's becoming a very meaningful number, and it's growing. It's grew nearly 80% year on year.
Right, right.
And last but not the least, we also have introduced shopping affiliate program, which again adds to the monetization kitty. Then you have brand deals. So I think the aim is to widen the pie as much as possible in terms of providing a very holistic slate, because different creators also have different aptitudes, and that on one end they can choose with all the multi formats that we talked about, and then on the other end they can choose in their entrepreneurship journey the multiple monetization models. And that is really, is our mission and our work to enabling them and creating that right environment.
Sure. 3 things that would define YouTube India's success for you in the next, say, 4 to 5 years.
You're going to make it hard, but I'll go back to what we started with, right? You said, what may be some of the lessons, and I think the one of the lessons in my journey is really been around focus on building trust in the community. I mean, e-commerce taught me that. And then this whole point around the ecosystem being the true test the more vibrant the ecosystem,
Yeah.
that being the true test of, successful platforms. How do we implement this in the YouTube context? I think the big vision would be to enable the creator economy and continue on that drive, which pretty much encompasses a lot of what I talked about. In doing that journey, I definitely see the role of both shorts and connected TV on one end being super strong. And yet we see new monetization pathways being very important. And we will remain very focused and committed to enabling not just our creators, but also other partners, media partners, education, healthcare. There are multiple areas in which we can contribute and would remain to do that. And last but not the least, the trust comes with creating a safe environment for both our users and creators. And therefore, that will also remain a very, very big focus and part of the North Star of the journey.
Right. Gunjan, thank you so much for joining us. This was a wonderful conversation.
Likewise. Thank you for having me again.